Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This workshop is held in honor of 2021 Domestic Violence Awareness Month. My name is Yan Ma. I'm the VAWA project coordinator at Southwestern College, VAWA being the Violence Against a Woman Act. As you may know, Southwestern College leads a consortium of San Diego area institutions and organizations as part of our VAWA grant effort. This VAWA grant allows our consortium to focus our attention on informing our communities about the issues underlying violence against women. That includes, but not limited to, domestic violence, sexual assaults, and sexual harassment. This workshop is presented by Mr. Luis Canseco Garcia. Mr. Canseco Garcia is a domestic violence education and prevention specialist at Community Resource Center, a nonprofit in North County, San Diego. This workshop is designed to cover the basics of domestic violence, the definition of domestic violence, types of abuse in relationships, the prevalence of domestic violence, warning signs of an abusive person, why do people stay in abusive relationships, how to help others who are experiencing domestic violence, how to embrace healthy relationships, and national and local resources. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mr. Luis Canseco Garcia.
Hi, thank you, Yan. Thank you. Yes, Yan, can you give me access to share my PowerPoint?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome, thank you. And welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us. And yes, as Yan mentioned, my name is Luis Canseco Garcia, and I'm a domestic violence education and prevention specialist at Community Resource Center. That's a nonprofit agency based in Encinitas, California, and we serve the North County area, but my education and prevention program serves the whole San Diego County. So please feel free to reach me anytime. I'll provide my information towards the end of the presentation. Yeah, thank you for being here. And one thing that I want to say before I start speaking about domestic violence is something that I always mention before every presentation, that it is not my intention to trigger any feelings or emotions in you, because domestic violence, the topic of domestic violence, sexual assault, is a very triggering topic. And so please do know that it's not my intention to do so. And if you are triggered, please reach out for support, and also feel free to walk away from this presentation at any time, because your health is priority. Now I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Thank you. Okay. So the objectives of this presentation is, I'm gonna try to fit this under an hour. I promise I will do my best. The objective is to define domestic violence, the prevalence, types of abuse, power and control wheel, the warning signs of somebody who might harm, and how does domestic violence affect people, and also how to help that one person, that one friend that you have that might be experiencing domestic violence. And also we'll be talking a little bit about healthy relationships. What is healthy relationships, right? So let's start. So domestic violence. Domestic violence is also called domestic abuse, relationship abuse, and intimate partner violence. I made a typo right there at the top left. So yes, it's also known as intimate partner violence, domestic abuse, or relationship abuse. Recently, we have been using intimate partner violence more. And the reason why is because with the term domestic violence, a lot of people assume, because of the word domestic, that it is something that only happens inside the home, right? That is so violence that happens inside the home, and that it only happens with married people. And that is not the case. And so that is the reason why many folks are using intimate partner violence instead over domestic violence. Me, myself, I use them both. So you'll hear me throughout the presentation use them interchangeably. But do know that that domestic violence is intimate partner violence, right? Violence that happens between two people in a relationship. And so intimate partner violence is a pattern of behaviors used by one partner current or former partner to maintain power and control over another partner in an intimate relationship. So that's what it is, right? That's how California defines domestic violence or intimate partner violence. It is a pattern of behaviors used by one person to maintain power and control, to manipulate the other person, right? To have control over the other person. And that can be a current boyfriend, spouse, dating partner, or a former spouse, ex, right? Or somebody that you used to be dating, right? So that's the definition. Domestic violence is a learned behavior and not caused by genetics, okay? And so that's a really good thing to remember, that is a learned behavior, because when we see domestic violence as a learned behavior, there is so much that we can do to prevent domestic violence, right? And as my title says it, right? I do prevention. That's my focus. That's what I aim to do, to prevent violence before it happens, right? We live in a world where we react to things instead of preventing, right? Yes, of course, we need intervention, and we still need so much resources to do intervention because a lot of violence is happening. And so we need to intervene, right? Intervention is case managers, counselors, therapists, right? Law enforcement, people who are intervening violence, right? But I wanna, I'm more in the field of preventing violence before it happens, right? And so that's why I do education. I bring resources to our communities, right? And I'll be talking more about prevention throughout the presentation. But yes, that is really important to remember, that domestic violence or intimate partner violence is a learned behavior, and it's not caused by genetics. Also, domestic violence is a choice that the abusive partner makes. It's not caused by alcohol or drugs, okay? Yes, alcohol and drugs may impair our judgments and may worsen things, right? But alcohol and drugs does not cause domestic violence, right? You know, I always share, I have a lot of friends that drink and they're not abusive, right? So it's not alcohol that is causing the violence. There is something much more deeper inside that person who is abusive, right? And that person might need a lot of healing, right? For that person to stop behaving in an abusive way. But it is really important to remember that domestic violence is a choice. It's not caused by alcohol or drugs. Domestic violence is also influenced by institutional and societal cultures. Yes, you know, domestic violence is a form of gender-based violence, right? And in gender-based violence, there is much that the culture does that influences us in being violent or in feeling superior to other people, right? So yes, it's also influenced by institutional and societal cultures. Who is at risk of domestic violence or intimate partner violence? Intimate partner violence is prevalent in every community and affects all people regardless of age, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, or nationality. It affects everyone, right? It happens in all communities. We have a saying that domestic violence does not discriminate. But it's really important to note that even though domestic violence does not discriminate, we do know that institutions do, right? And so, yes, of course, we need to pay more attention to certain groups in the community that often don't receive the attention that they need, right? And I myself, I witnessed this. For example, me as a bilingual, I provide a lot of Spanish workshops to our Spanish-speaking populations here in San Diego. And I've been in groups where I'm delivering the education, the resources to Spanish-speaking parents, right? And I've come across many mothers who have tell me, Luis, are these resources new, right? And no, these resources are not new. Of course, we need more. Yes, we need more of these, but they're not new. They just haven't reached a certain group of people, right? And so it's really important to pay attention to that, that yes, some groups are more disadvantaged than others, right? When it comes to accessing resources. If you live in a poor neighborhood, poor area, it might be more difficult for you to access certain resources, right? Than other areas have. Prevalence. So let me start with this statistic. It's not here, but 1 in 3 and 1 in 4. So 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience some form of intimate partner violence, stalking, or emotional abuse in their lifetime, right? More specific, 1 in 5 women and 1 in 7 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. So yes, the statistic is huge, it's high. Also with teens, 1 in 3 teens will experience intimate partner violence, which is, we call it teen dating violence also, emotional abuse or stalking before they reach the age of 18, right? So this number it's huge, it grows, right? And that is the reason why we do what we do, right? Girls and young women between the ages of 16 and 24 experience the highest rate of intimate partner violence, almost triple the national average. Also, 30% of students, college students, experience rape or sexual assault, right? And only 20% of college students report to law enforcement. Youth who identify as LGBTQ+ are more likely to experience physical and psychological abuse and sexual coercion than their straight peers. Approximately 50% of all women who are homeless report that domestic violence was the immediate cause of their homelessness, right? So yes, the statistic is huge. You know, when we think about 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience some form of intimate partner violence, whether that is physical, emotional, or stalking, the number is huge, right? It is a public health concern, right? And that is the way we need to see it, right? We need to stop seeing this problem as a woman's issue or, you know, a family problem. No, this is a public health concern, right? That is the perspective that we should all take on to combat this this abuse, that violence that is happening in our communities. Types of abuse. Of course, there is, which more people are really knowledgeable with, is physical violence, right? When I hold workshops, I ask people, what is domestic violence? And the first thing they say is hitting, punching, cutting, strangling people, right? People point out the physical violence, right? Because a lot of people think that domestic violence is physical violence. Some people who are in abusive relationships in which their abuse is not physical and it's emotional, it's psychological, they will say that they're not in an abusive relationship because they don't know, right? And so that's why it's really important for us, for all of us, to bring this education and awareness to our communities, because a lot of people do not know they are in an abusive relationship because they're not being punched or hit by their partner, right? So domestic violence is emotional or verbal abuse, also called psychological abuse, where the partner, you know, calls his or her partner names, insults her. This person isolates you from friends and families. This person makes fun of your spiritual beliefs, right? Abuses of your spiritual beliefs. This person threatens you with things, right? All of this causes emotional, psychological abuse. And, you know, we have heard from survivors of domestic violence that emotional and psychological abuse is even worse than physical violence, right? And I almost don't like to say this because I don't like to put things in, you know, what's worst. spectrum here or scale, right? I don't like to scale the abuse, but survivors of domestic violence have told us that emotional psychological abuse is worse than physical violence. And that is because it stays with you for so long, right? It stays with you for years, for decades. And there's people who this trauma stays with them for their whole lifetime, right? So emotional psychological abuse, it's really huge. And again, I'm repeating myself, but a lot of people do not know that they are in an abusive relationship when they're being emotionally or psychologically abused, right? Another type of abuse is sexual abuse, and that is all forms of sexual assaults, unwanted touching, coercion, rape, reproductive abuse. That is when your partner tells you you can or you cannot have babies, right? When this person controls your reproductive system, right? That is considered sexual abuse. And remember, all of these types of abuse here, they are considered violence in the state of California. So all of these are a crime. Okay. There's also financial abuse, which your partner might give you an allowance, right? This is the money you have for the week. If that's all you have. If you finish it within a few days, that's on you. When this person takes your checks away from you and puts him or her into their account, right? When this person prevents you from working, right? When this person says to you, you cannot work, or you should, when this person decides for you, that's when it is abusive, right? When this person maxes out your credit cards, right? This is financial abuse. A majority of people who are in a domestic violence situation, financial abuse is always present. It's almost always present. The other person, maxes out their credit cards or, takes money away from them. Digital abuse, that is when somebody tells you who you can and you cannot follow, who you can be friends with on social media or who you cannot be friends with. When also digital abuse is when somebody sends you disturbing messages or pictures. Also when somebody is pressuring you to send them pictures, right? That is digital abuse. When somebody steals your passwords. So yes, that's digital abuse. And stalking and cyber stalking, that is when somebody is following you around, right, physically, or when somebody's spying on you. But this can also be done on social media and through the use of technology, which is called cyber stalking, right? And now that has become very common lately in the last decade, right? Because of the surge of technology, right? And cell phones and apps. Not too long ago, I was doing a workshop with youth, and this young lady told me that her boyfriend was tracking her through the app Snapchat. So in Snapchat, there's a feature called ghost mode, I believe, and you can turn it on and off, but if you turn it on, people can see where you are at all times, right? And so I asked the young girl, why is it that your boyfriend tracks you? Why is it that your boyfriend wants you to turn on your ghost mode on so he can see where you are? And she said, oh, because he loves me. He cares about me, right? And yes, we'll talk more about that. But, and so I asked her, right? How about your parents? Do you have your parents? She said, yes, I have both of my parents. And I asked, do you have a good relationship with your parents? She said, my parents are very loving and really caring. And then I asked her, do your parents track you? She said, no. And so my question was, why is it that your parents track you and your friend and your boyfriend does, right? And so that is the importance of why we need to talk to youth, right? And we need to stop normalizing unhealthy behaviors. And also we need to stop justifying those unhealthy behaviors, right? And really have a talk with our youth about what is healthy and what is not healthy, right? Domestic violence is a community problem. It affects a lot of people, right? Of course, it affects the victim in many ways, but it also hurts the children, right? If this person has children, if this family have children, domestic violence is affecting them, even though if they are babies, right? We have seen the research lately that, I believe it is 3 years old, if from 3 years old children, and even before 3 years old, babies can, they have a reaction to violence and scream around their house, right? But after 3 years old, if the child witnesses domestic violence, that really affects their growth, right? When they become adults and the way they might go out and about with their own relationships, right? And we'll talk more about that in a few slides. But yes, domestic violence affects the children. Many people will say, oh, they're too little to remember, or no, they don't know what's happening. No, they know. They might not know exactly what's happening, but biologically they are having a reaction to the violence that is happening around them. You want to learn more about that, please refer to ACEs. That's what it's called. Look it up on Google. It's adverse childhood experiences. That's what it is, ACEs, and you'll learn how is it the babies and children react to domestic violence around them, even though even if they're not being abused physically and directly. Also, it affects friends, right? I come across people who tell me, Luis, my friend is in an abusive relationship, but she doesn't let me help her, and I don't know what to do. She's pushing me away. She says that I'm the one who's trying to break her relationship, and so she calls me names. She gets mad at me, and all she's trying to do is just help her friend, right? So domestic violence affects friends and family members, neighbors are concerned, of course. Abusive partners are often not held accountable. That is true. Abusive partners often do not have options to heal, right? We have a problem in our society as well where we, somebody commits a crime, we want to throw them to jail. Well, that's not going to fix anything, right? Yes, we have the batters intervention program that help abusive person recover, but yet we don't have, the research doesn't show that it is efficient, right? And so we need to invest more in prevention and invest more in ways where we can heal people who abuse, right? Because me as a prevention, somebody who wants to stop domestic violence, right? I want to prevent violence from happening, right? And if it happens, I want to help the victims and survivors, but I also want to help the person who caused the violence, because if we don't help that person's gonna go on with life, and more than likely is gonna hurt somebody else. And so we need to stop that, right? We need to help that person, right? Victims, survivors need a lot of help, but also people who abuse. They themselves have huge internal problems, right? And so they need our help as well. The power and control wheel. So I have the power and control wheel here. It can take us a whole hour to talk about just the power and control wheel, but please, you can look it up on Google. Just type in domestic violence power and control wheel, so you can have a copy yourself. But so what the power and control wheel portrays is how domestic violence manifests in relationships, right? So for example, let's start with the one on the top right side, using intimidation. That's when somebody, the abusive person makes her afraid, makes her or him afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, right? Destroying her property, his property, abusing pets, or displaying weapons. So this is one way that somebody who abuses will try to gain control over you by using intimidation, by intimidating you, right? Using emotional abuse, putting you down, making you feel bad about yourself, calling your partner names, right? Making your partner think that he or she is crazy, playing mind games with your partner, right? Using isolation, that is when somebody controls what you do, who you see and who you talk to, everything that you do, and tries to isolate you. And so this is a very common tactic by somebody who harms to gain power and control over you, is to isolate you from family and friends. It is really common in abusive relationships. And that is one reason why often people don't reach out for help, because they're isolated, meaning that they don't have a network, they don't have friends and family members to talk to, right? Because for so long this person has isolated his or her partner, that person no longer has a communication and a network of people, right? And so this person uses that tactic of cutting all your network. And this person who harms might say something like, oh, you need to stop hanging out with your friends because, your friends, I don't know, are very loud, or your friends party too much, or your friends this and that, right? So this person so that's a sign of somebody who harms, right? When somebody's telling you things like that, that's a warning sign, right? Or when this person tries to disconnect you from your family members, this person might say something like, oh, I don't want to go to your family's party because your brother doesn't like me, or your uncle doesn't like me, or your cousin looks at me weird. Again, warning sign, right? Warning sign that this person is trying to isolate you, right? And yes, this isolation happens a lot in abusive relationships. It's really common. Again, I repeat myself, this is one of the reasons why people don't reach out for help, because they simply don't have anyone to talk to, right? Let's skip that one. Let's use using children, for example. Somebody will try to gain power and control over you by using the children, right? This person might make you feel guilty, right? Oh, if you divorce me, or if you break up with me, the children are gonna grow up without a father or a mother. So this person again is using this tactic of using the children to try to manipulate you and control you, right? Or it can be something like, if you leave me, I'm gonna take the children away from you, right? That's really common. Yes, so those are some examples. Another example that maybe is not here is the here in San Diego, what we hear, here in the state of California, what we hear a lot is when people use legal status to threaten you, right? So the harm doer, the person causing the harm, the abuser might say something like, oh, if you leave me, I'm gonna report you to ICE, right? Or you cannot leave me because if you leave, they're gonna take you. That is very common here in the state of California. And so yes, check out this power and control wheel on Google. You can type power and control, domestic violence power and control wheel, and it's gonna come up right away, and you can download the PDF version. But yeah, so go ahead and share with the people around you. Cycle of abuse. So this is a cycle. This happens a lot in domestic violence, in abusive relationships, where it all starts really nice. Our relationship starts really good, with love, romance, right? But then when somebody, when somebody who has internal, issues going on, is gonna make the relationship unhealthy, right? It's gonna make the relationship toxic, and so it starts by tension. So I will, tension starts building, right? There's miscommunication happening. somebody doesn't feel good, right? And so then it moves into phase 2, which is incident, right? Whether that is whether that is physical or verbal, emotional abuse happens, right? It can be physical, it can be emotional. Somebody calls you names, somebody scream at you. The incident happened, and so after that is phase 3, which is the person who caused the harm comes back to you and says, "I'm really sorry for what I did. I'm apologizing. Here are some flowers. Here are some chocolates, right?" And then the honeymoon stage, phase 4, which is where the victim survivor says, "Okay, I forgive you," and then that incident is seen something of the past. It's kind of like forgotten, and they both deny it, right, that it happened, right? And it feels good, right? The honeymoon is like, it feels like everything is back to normal. But then again, phase 1, the tension starts to build. Incident, apologies, and honeymoon, and it goes. It's a cycle of abuse, and people stay in this cycle of abuse for many years. For many years, it usually takes 7 tries for people to actually leave this abusive relationship, right? And this cycle of abuse will not end until somebody seeks out for help, right? And more likely is the person being abused, right? Which that person will seek out for services or will ask for help. Usually when the harm doer usually doesn't seek out for help. But yes, this cycle of abuse will not stop until somebody asks for help. And some people, unfortunately, they live their whole life like this, right? I myself know of people who spend their whole lives in an abusive relationship, and that's just how it was for their whole lives, right? Yeah, so that's the cycle of abuse. If you are in that situation, please reach out for help, and I'll talk more about that in a few slides. So warning signs of somebody who might harm. This person is extremely jealous. Jealousy is a natural instinct of humans, right? Jealousy in itself is not harmful, right? When you start feeling those jealous feelings, you're not causing any harm, right? But how you act upon those jealousy feelings is when it can cause a lot of harm, right? So somebody who might harm is a person who is extremely jealous, right? This person is insecure about himself or herself. That's what tries to control you, right? Because this person lacks self-worth and self-control, himself or herself. This person is possessive, and this person wants you there every day, 24 hours, right? And this person might start tracking you. So these are signs of somebody who might harm. This person checks your cell phone, emails, and social media without consent, without your permission, right? This person makes threats and false accusations. That's another warning sign. If this person is belittling you or putting you down, calling you names, that's another warning sign. And it's important to note that these warning signs are very real, right? And we really need to pay attention to these warning signs, because that's how domestic violence starts. That's how abuse in a relationship starts, right? It doesn't start at the first date, right? It's not like you're at the first date and this person is gonna tell you, "Oh, I'm an abusive person and this is what I do." No, right? This person, he might have a really nice career, right? He might be a really beautiful or handsome person, and talk really smooth to you. and make you feel like you are the king or the queen of the world, right? So, and slowly this person will start showing some of these warning signs, right? He might become really, he might be very jealous, or starts checking your phone, or call you names, right? And then it graduates into worse and worse abuse. That's how abuse happens, right? Most of the time. So another warning signs of somebody who harmed is this person has an explosive temper and erratic mood swings. So this person can be really happy 1 minute and really mad the following minute, right? This person punches doors or throws things at you. So this is a huge warning sign, right? Because even though this person might not be hitting you or throwing things at you, again, violence graduates, right? So this person might start by punching the door and throwing things around, which eventually will graduate through throwing punches at you, right? So warning sign of this person is punching holes through the walls and throwing things at you. Again, I repeat myself from the previous slide. When this person tries to isolate you from family and friends, that is a common tactic of somebody who harms. So that's a warning sign. When this person is constantly telling you what to do, right? This person wants to gain power and control over you, wants to manipulate you, right? This person wants to tell you what to eat, how to dress, right? What can you do? How to talk, right? How to sit. You know, when this person tries to start telling you what to do, that is controlling, and that is a huge warning sign. And also when this person repeatedly pressures you to have sex with them. How domestic violence affects the victim, significantly higher rates of eating disorder behaviors. Yes, people develop eating disorders, and that is because of stress, anxiety, right? So it causes stomach problems, reproductive problems to women, right? People also experience high rates of suicide attempts, depression, people fall into depression, lower self-esteem, lower levels of emotional well-being, difficulties building new relationship. Of course, that is kind of obvious, right? If you experience a really bad relationship, you are gonna be really careful when you start a new one, right? And you're gonna lack a lot of trusting, right? Because of what happened to you in your previous experience. Homelessness, as I mentioned earlier, 50% of women who are homeless tell us that domestic violence was the cause of their homelessness, and trauma, right? Domestic violence causes trauma, and you know, and the thing is that when you don't heal that trauma, it won't go away, right? It won't go away until you heal your trauma and your emotional, mental health, right? You know, I've come across people who share with me that, you know, they experienced domestic violence early in their lives, and you know, this was a decade ago, and they're reaching out because they need help mentally, right? Because even though this happened more than a decade ago, this violence that happened to them it's still haunting them, right? And it affects their children. And so yes, that is trauma. Trauma is very real, and please reach out for support if you are experiencing any of these problems. How to help? So when somebody comes to you, right, this person might be a friend or a family member. This person is experiencing intimate partner violence, and so this person comes to you. How do you help that person? So the first thing is listen. That's what the thing that I always tell people: listen to them, right? Because I think we as humans, we have this tendency of trying to fix things right away. And so one of the things that we do when people come for help is we say things such as, oh, you know what? This is what I did when I was experiencing something like that. Oh, I went through that, and this is what I did. This is what you should do. And so now you are, you know, it's becoming about you. instead of the survivor or the victim, right? And so that's why just listen to that person, listen to the story, validate what they're telling you, and support their decisions. They're the experts in their relationship. They might be in an abusive relationship, unhealthy, toxic relationship, but they're still the experts in that relationship because they know better. They know the harm doer better than anyone else, right? So when that person tells you that I cannot leave, it's because that person cannot leave, because that person knows what can happen if he or she leaves, right? So support their decisions, but of course, be there for them, believe them, and don't blame them, right? Don't say things such as, why don't you just leave? That's like really common that people ask, why don't you just leave? This, when you say, why don't you just leave, you're victim blaming. You're putting the blame on the victim, right? Because you're making him or her feel like it's her fault for not leaving, right? And now this person is gonna feel guilty, and is gonna, believe that it is his or her fault for this abuse and stay in that abusive relationship, right? So don't say things such as, why don't you just leave? Of course, tell them that you're concerned for their safety, right? And provide a safe place to talk about this, right? If they want to share this with you, make sure that you are in a safe place, physically in a safe place, right? Where that harm door is not there. Tell them that abuse is not part of a loving relationship. Remind them that, right? Because again, emotional and psychological abuse goes really, really far, right? When somebody has control and power over you, the sky is the limit to what that person can do to you, right? So often people are in abusive relationships for too long that they normalize the abusive behavior, right? They think that is just part of their relationship, especially if they grew up themselves, if they themselves grew up in an abusive household, learning that, this, my parents used to fight, so this is how relationships are. And so now I'm in a relationship and this person abuses me and this is how relationships are, right? So for many people believe that this is normal. So tell them, remind them that no, abuse is not part of a loving relationship, and that the abuse happening in the relationship is not their fault, and that they are worthy of love, respect, and safety, right? Another thing is avoid attacking the abuser. I know that we, as really good friends, we want to protect what we care about, right? So we might attack the abuser or say things to the abuser, or just tell our friend bad things about the abuser because at the moment we are really upset, mad about what that person is doing to our friend, right? No, avoid attacking the abuser because at this moment you want to focus on the survivor. You want to focus on your friend. Invest all the energy on your friend, right? Why waste energy on the person causing harm? So that's one. The other one is often people love their partners, right? Most of the time, people love their partners, right? They wish that they weren't abusive, and they wish that the abuse would go away, but they love their partners, and so that is one of the reasons why people stay. Love, as twisted as it might sound, that is true. People stay because of love. That's one of the reasons. So don't attack the abuser because that person, your friend, might be in love with his or her partner, right? So it is not right for you to be attacking the person who caused the harm. And of course, be aware of the local resources in your community, right? Be aware of the resource centers nearby, so you can help your friend with that, right? We at CRC, Community Resource Center, we are in North County, right? But there's different agencies throughout the county. But even if you, let's say you live down south and you only have Community Resource Center who is up north in the North County area, even if you were to give your friend that resource, that's a lot, because when this person calls our hotline and it's from South San Diego, we might not be able to bring her in physically to our to provide her our services, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna connect her with another agency down south, right? We are all connected here in San Diego. All of the domestic violence resource centers are connected. We have different names, right? But we are all connected, and we collaborate and we help each other and we recommend each other to people, right? Because again, our goal is to help domestic violence survivors and also to prevent domestic violence, right? So why do people stay in abusive relationships? Fear is one, right? People are, fear leaving, right? Because what is my partner gonna do to me if I leave, right? So fear is huge. Hope, meaning that sometimes people believe that their abusive partner can get better, and so that's why they stay, because they really have that hope that they're gonna get better, right? And that the abuse is gonna stop. That almost doesn't happen, but that is one reason why people stay. Children, that's huge, right? He is the mother or father of my children. If I leave, I'm gonna separate my children from their father or mother, right? So that one's huge. Money, of course, right? People stay in abusive relationship because that's the only way that they can provide for their children, having two incomes, right? Having a roof over their head, right? So if I don't have any money, I cannot go and rent a place on my own, right? Especially how expensive the rent is here in San Diego. So yeah, money it's a huge one. It's another reason why people stay in abusive relationships. Shame, right? What are people gonna say? What is my family gonna say if I leave my partner, right? If I leave the person I've been with for so long, if I leave the person that I have children with, if I leave the person that I marry, what are my family gonna say? What are my friends gonna say? Shame. So shame is another one. Low self-esteem. People feel they've been in an abusive relationship for too long that their self-esteem is just broken. They feel that they're not worthy of love. They feel that they are not worthy of somebody else loving them, right? And actually, that is one thing that somebody who harms, somebody who is abusive, will say to his or her victim is, if you leave, who's gonna take you? Who's gonna like you? Who's gonna want you with children? Look at you. You don't, throws things at him or her, right? And so it breaks that person's self-esteem. So this person has very low self-esteem, and so this person simply doesn't feel worthy, right, of love, and therefore might stay in an abusive relationship. Believe that abuse is normal. This is what I was talking about, right? This person might believe that abuse is normal, and that's why this person stays. Cultural and religious beliefs, right? For example, in my culture, the Latinx community, me being Mexican, there's a big belief that if you marry someone, you stick with it forever, right? Whatever happens. And so that belief can make people stay in abusive relationships, right? And I've heard this, right, where people have told me, well, I stay in that abusive relationship because my own mother told me that to deal with it, that he was my husband and that I marry him and that it was on me, right? And so culture and religious beliefs are another reason why people stay in abusive relationships. Language barriers, right? People who might not speak the dominant language, which is English, might not be it's definitely a barrier for them to seek out for help, right? And the other one that I spoke about, love, right? Sometimes people love their partner and goes hand in hand with hope. They think that their partner is gonna get better, right? And so these are some of the reasons why people stay in abusive relationship. But there's help, right? There is help. The thing that I want you all to take is that there is help, right? Even when it comes to money. For example, CRC, we have our Housing First program where we help survivors of domestic violence with rents, right? With transportation. We help them with money. So one, they don't become homeless. Two, so they can get out of abusive relationship. And three, so they can provide for their children, right? So yes, there are enough resources out in the community. And so for me, that's what I want you to take, right? That the resources exist, and that please share the resources with the people in your networks. Good news is that domestic violence is preventable. So how do we prevent it? We educate people. We teach safe and healthy relationship skills. That's something that I do workshops with, right? This presentation is an intro to domestic violence, but this presentation itself can be expanded to like 4 or 6 hours, right? Because there's so much to talk about. Even just this previous slide, I'm like holding myself because I know time is running, right? But there's so much to talk about. So yes, let's talk about safe and healthy relationship skills with our youth, with our parents, with everyone, right? What is healthy, what's not healthy? And let's engage the adults, the parents, and right? Also influential adults such as coaches, right? Sport people who are coaches in schools. How are you talking to your team about healthy relationships, right? That's really important. Create protective environments, right? Such as school climate, such what we're doing here right now, right? With in this presentation, right? We are bringing this awareness and this education to all of you staff, faculty, and students, right? Because we want to change the climate, right, of the school, and have the students and everyone in the school know about domestic violence and be aware of domestic violence, right? And more importantly, know that there are resources for folks. Strengthening economic support for families, of course, right? Let's help people with resources, and that is something that we do. So when I go educate people and do workshops, I don't only provide workshops and education, but I bring the resources necessary, right? That's what people need too, right? Not just education, but both education and resources, because if they're struggling with money, they're struggling to pay rent, stress is gonna go up in the household, right? And that can lead to other things. And so how can we help that family so that family doesn't stress and have this household problems going on, right? So yes, we have to help people economically as well. Support survivors to increase safety and lessen harm. Of course, more services for survivors of domestic violence, because if we can help and reach more survivors of domestic violence, we can take them to a safer place, right, where the violence can stop. For you, follow organizations on social media so you can amplify their message with the people in your networks, right? And I'll show some organizations right now in a few seconds. Also, support elected officials who support violence prevention. Both, right? Both for people who support violence prevention and services for victims and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Relationship rights, you have the right to privacy, both online and off. You have the right to feel safe and respected. You have the right to decide who you want to date or not date. You have the right to say no at any time to sex, to drugs, alcohol, to a relationship, even if you have said yes before. You have the right to hang out with your friends and family and do things you enjoy without your partner getting jealous or controlling you. You have the right to end a relationship that isn't right or healthy for you. You have the right to live free from violence and abuse. So those are your relationship rights. I do workshops on this topic as well, and with healthy relationships as well. Healthy relationships are based on equality, respect, and trust. Open communication and honesty are central. Conflicts are solved in a fair and rational way. Each partner takes responsibility for their actions and words. Partners enjoy privacy, space, and separate identities. Partners build each other up. Both partners feel good and have fun together most of the time. Most of the time, right? Because we know that relationships are not perfect, and that is okay as long as there is respect and we work towards making our relationships better, right? So Community Resource Center here below is the hotline, the 877-633-1112, and then our website. Again, we have the hotline you can call at any time of day, night, if you're experiencing domestic violence, and we have a multitude of services. Check us up online so you can go through the services that we have. Also the National Domestic Violence Hotline, that's their number, or you can scan right here and it will take you to their website where there is so much education about domestic violence, and also you can chat to an advocate there if you're experiencing domestic violence, and if you need services, the National Domestic Violence will connect you with your closest resource center. And that's about it. Here is the violence prevention organizations. The ones in black are the ones that focus in preventing violence and providing services for survivors of domestic violence. And then the ones in blue are the organization that focus in education and providing education for folks and really changing the culture of gender-based violence and all that violence that exists towards women, girls, and non-binary folks. So yes, that's about it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you so much for this great presentation. It's very helpful and very informing. I have a question actually. So we know when we talk about these various types of violence, I'm wondering about cold violence. Let's say your partner constantly ignore your feelings and they don't want to like build connection either emotionally or physically. Does this count as domestic violence?
The cold violence, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we talk about that in our healthy relationship workshop, right? So the way we teach it is that there's a spectrum. There is healthy relationships, unhealthy, and then there is abuse, right? And so, so what I tell people is that, okay, we all want to strive for healthy relationships, and this is how a healthy relationship looks. These are the signs of healthy relationships. And yes, of course, we might not always be in that side of the spectrum. Maybe slowly it will come down to the unhealthy, but it is a responsibility both in the relationship to take it back to the healthy side and not let it get to the healthy and worse to the abuse. Because once it goes to the abusive side, then that's when you really need to reach out for help and or have a decision to make on your relationship. But yeah, when somebody is giving you that cold shoulder, right, not paying attention to you, even though it might not be violence, it is something that is not healthy, right? And there is where I would encourage people to talk to your partner. Talk to your partner about what's bothering you, what's not good in the relationship. And both people in the relationship, because healthy relationships are about equality, both people in the relationship need to work towards that, right? And now if that person doesn't want to put in the work towards working to a healthy relationship, then you might have a decision to make. Yeah, thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Luis. Does that mean that a cold, a cold relationship is not abusive, but it's not?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. So a cold relationship is not abusive, but it's not healthy. And so yes, there's work that needs to be done. And of course, do the work again with your partner. Do the work. You might, you can do it both of you together. Look out for online, right? How to have a healthy relationship, or you can go to a therapist, right, who will help you have healthy relationships. But then if that doesn't work, then that's when you have a decision to make. Yeah.
Thank you, Luis.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Anyone else has any questions? May, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Good.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just have a question. Luis, so do you guys work with like local law enforcement agencies or no?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
So we work with, so this is the thing. We don't report to law enforcement. So if somebody comes to us seeking domestic violence services, we don't report to law enforcement. We don't do that. We don't report to law enforcement. We don't report to, we don't ask for people's legal status. Yeah. But of course, if we know that if somebody is in danger, in immediate danger, we are gonna call law enforcement. So that's the only way that we work with law enforcement. Only when there's immediate danger is when we call law enforcement. Because that's part of mandatory reporting, right? You need to report when danger is immediate. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So I was thinking if you guys provide like training to law enforcement officers, anything of that nature. So
in that sense, yes. So we do trainings for law enforcement. We do, yeah, we do trainings for them, especially with our local ones here in Oak County. We do have trainings for law enforcement. Yeah, and they also some of them do come to our 40-hour training. So we provide our annual 40-hour training in June, and that is that's a certificate actually by the state of California on domestic violence advocate. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Wow, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I have another question. I think it's very hard to identify whether a relationship is being emotionally and verbally abused. Like, how can, like, if I believe my friend has been emotionally or verbally abused, but he or she doesn't think so, I don't know how to define this kind of abusive relationship.
Yeah, and that is the thing, you know, a lot of people are in abusive relationships, emotionally and psychological abuse, and they don't know that they are in an abusive relationship. They don't know because they don't know that domestic violence includes emotional and psychological abuse. And so, yes, I mean, we as friends, we need to let them know that it is abusive, right? And sometimes, you know, sometimes even the person causing the harm doesn't know that he's being abusive. That happens too. When that person doesn't know that he or she is being abusive emotionally. And so, yes, it is domestic violence and, you know, relationships. It's a very complex situation. But yeah, but as a friend, we need to educate our friends, right? We need to reach out to them and tell them that it's not healthy for you to be experiencing emotional abuse, and it's not part of a healthy and loving relationship. And encourage your friend to reach out for help. And one thing that I offer youth, because with youth, you know, they often tell me, Luis, but how do I know if this is healthy or not healthy? I don't know. And so one is education. The other one is there's a resource for youth called loveisrespect.org. And youth can ask any question here. They can either call, text, or chat online and ask any question to these advocates work at Love is Respect, and ask any question about the relationship, and these advocates will help them, will guide them through the relationship and let them know if it's healthy or not healthy, or what is that they should do. Yeah.
Thank you, Luis.
Yes, of course.
It's very helpful. Are there any other questions?
And one thing that I would encourage everyone, everyone who is in a relationship is to really educate yourself, or educate, along with your partner. There's education online, educate yourself about what's healthy and what's not healthy. And also, if you have a concern, if something is bothering you in your relationship, communication is key. Tell your partner what's bothering you, right? Because if you don't say anything, that person is gonna keep doing it without knowing that it's bothering you. And so, yeah, communication is key. Just bring it up, say what's bothering you, and both work towards making the relationship better.
Okay, thank you very much, Luis, for this great workshop. I believe that everyone has learned a lot from this workshop. And thank you everyone for attending our event of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we hope to see you at our future events. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.